I want to start by saying I am not a dramatic person. I don't do scenes. I don't cry in public. I don't post vague things on Instagram at 2 a.m. I'm a 29-year-old financial analyst who color codes her calendar, meal preps on Sundays, and once reorganized an entire department's reporting structure because the inefficiency was giving me a tension headache. My ex-boyfriend, Adam, knew all of this about me. He just forgot to take it seriously. That was his mistake. Adam and I dated for 3 years. We met at a mutual friend's housewarming, bonded over both thinking the guacamole was oversalted, and were inseparable within about 6 weeks. He was funny, smart, and the kind of genuinely warm person who remembers your coworkers' names and asks about them. He worked in marketing. He had good taste in restaurants and terrible taste in movies, and I loved him in that complete, unguarded way you love someone when you've decided, quietly, that this is the person. We moved in together after 18 months, split the rent on a nice apartment in Charlotte, got a succulent wall that was entirely my project and a record player that was entirely his. Talked, seriously and specifically, about the future, the kind of conversations where you discuss timelines and cities, and whether you want a big wedding or a small one. I wanted small. He said he did too. He was lying about more than the wedding. I found out on a Tuesday in March, which is a deeply undramatic day of the week to have your life rearranged, but that's how it goes. I came home early from work, migraine, the kind that makes light feel personal, and found Adam's laptop open on the kitchen counter. I wasn't snooping. I was going to close it because the brightness was making my head worse. Except the screen was open to his messages, and the name at the top of the thread was Jess, and the message visible without even scrolling was enough, more than enough. I stood in the kitchen for a very long time. Then I did something that I think surprised even me. I took out my phone, photographed the screen, closed the laptop, took 2 ibuprofen, went to the bedroom, and lay down in the dark. I did not cry. I cried, but only for about 10 minutes, and then something else took over. Something that felt less like grief and more like a spreadsheet opening in my brain. I had things to calculate. Jess was not a stranger. Jess was a girl from his office whom I had met 4 times at work events. She had always been friendly to me in the specific, slightly too warm way that I now understand was guilt performing as charm. She had complimented my blazer once at a company Christmas party, and I had said thank you and meant it, and she had smiled and known exactly what she was doing, and I had known. I also knew from the brief glimpse of the thread that this was not new. The casual intimacy of the messages, the shorthand, the references to things I'd never heard of, the easy back and forth, told me this had been going on for a while. People who are new to each other don't message like that. People who have been messaging like that for months do. When Adam came home that evening, I was making dinner and I smiled and said I felt better and asked about his day. He said it was fine. He told me a story about a difficult client. He asked if I wanted wine. Sure, I said. Red. He opened a bottle and poured 2 glasses and we ate dinner, and I watched him the way you watch something you are assessing for the last time, cataloging it, and I thought, I need to know everything before I do anything. I am a financial analyst. My entire job is finding the true picture underneath the presented one, locating the number that's been smoothed over, identifying the pattern that only becomes visible when you zoom out far enough. I am very, very good at this. I gave myself 2 weeks. I want to be clear. I did not become a paranoid person. I did not go through his phone while he slept. I did not hire anyone. I simply paid attention, in the focused, methodical way I pay attention to quarterly reports, to the information that was already available to me if I looked at it correctly. What I found over 2 weeks. The first thing was the timeline, cross-referencing his behavior, the late nights, the phone face-down habit that had started around 8 months ago, the 2 work trips that now looked different in hindsight. I estimated the affair had been running for approximately 9 or 10 months, nearly a year. Second thing was the money. We had a joint account for household expenses, and his personal account was linked to a shared budgeting app we'd set up together 18 months ago and which he had, apparently, forgotten about. The charges told a story. Restaurants I'd never been to on evenings I'd been home alone thinking he was working late. A hotel charge 3 months ago during a weekend when he'd told me he was at a conference in Raleigh. Another one more reason. The third thing was the apartment lease. Both our names were on it. It expired in 4 months. The fourth thing, and this is the one that changed the shape of everything, was my promotion. I need to explain this part carefully, because it's the hinge the whole thing turns on. I had been up for a significant promotion at work for several months. Senior analyst, team lead, substantial salary increase. I hadn't told many people because I didn't want to jinx it. I had told Adam. Adam, because he worked in marketing and knew people and was genuinely sociable, knew someone who sat near the hearing manager at my company. This is Charlotte. Everyone knows someone who knows someone. And at some point, in some context I was not present for, my promotion had apparently come up in conversation. I found this out because my coworker, Priya, who is my work best friend and one of the most trustworthy people I have ever met, told me carefully and with visible discomfort that she had heard a rumor that someone had been talking me down to people adjacent to the hearing decision. Subtly. The kind of thing that doesn't leave fingerprints. Mentioning that I was planning to move cities soon, which I was not. Mentioning that I had been stressed and overwhelmed lately, which was a distortion. Small, deniable, precisely targeted nudges. She didn't know who. She just wanted me to know. I thought about it for 24 hours, and I knew who. I don't know why he did it. I've had a lot of time to think about it, and the most honest answer I can come up with is that smaller men sometimes do small things to people who are outgrowing them, and they don't even fully admit to themselves that's what they're doing. It's not cartoonish villainy. It's just weakness and insecurity wearing the mask of ordinary behavior. It didn't work, as it turned out. I got the promotion anyway 2 weeks later because my work speaks for itself and always has. But he had tried. While sleeping next to me, while sharing my dinner table, while drinking wine I'd poured him, he had quietly tried to sand down my future. And that, more than anything else, is what made me stop being sad and start being surgical. The plan. First, the lease. The apartment was in both our names, but I had paid the deposit, 3 months' rent, entirely from my savings before we'd set up the joint account. I had the receipts. I spoke to our landlord, a reasonable woman named Deborah who had always liked me better than Adam because I was the one who actually reported maintenance issues properly. I explained that the relationship was ending and asked about options. Deborah, who I suspected had been through something similar based on the knowing look she gave me, was helpful. I had rights regarding the deposit. More importantly, given the lease timing and a clause I had read carefully when we signed, and Adam almost certainly had not, I had options regarding who would need to find new housing in 4 months. It would be him, not me. I had already identified an apartment 2 blocks away, nicer, slightly cheaper, that I could move into in 6 weeks if I chose to. I did not sign anything yet. I just knew. Second, the joint account. I did not touch a dollar. I spoke to my bank about the process for removing a joint account holder, understood the timeline and requirements, and waited. I moved my direct deposit, which he didn't know the details of because he'd never asked, because he was the kind of person who found finances boring, to a new personal account. Quietly. No flags, no drama. Third, the work situation. I had a careful, documented conversation with Priya. I made notes. I didn't confront Adam about it, and I didn't report it formally. I had no hard proof, and besides, it hadn't worked. What I did was make sure that the people who mattered at my company knew, through natural professional interaction over the following weeks, exactly how good I was at my job. I was already good at my job. Now I was visibly, undeniably, on the record good at my job. I led a project presentation that my new manager later described as the best she'd seen from the team all quarter. I was not doing this for revenge. I was doing it because I refused to let his small, scared interference be the lasting mark on my career. Fourth, Jess. I did nothing about Jess. I want to be clear about this. She was not the architect of my betrayal, Adam was. She owed me nothing. He owed me everything. I have no interest in a world where women tear each other apart over men who aren't worth it. She can have him, and I genuinely mean that. What I did do was make sure, through a mutual friend who didn't know the full context, that the work relationship between Adam and Jess was not quite as invisible as they believed. Not exposing them. Just making sure the right person in their office was gently aware that the two of them seemed close. Office politics would do the rest, slowly and without my fingerprints on it. Fifth and finally, the conversation. 6 weeks after I found out, Sunday evening, I had already signed the lease on my new apartment. I had already moved my direct deposit. I had already had a very pleasant conversation with Deborah about the lease terms. I had already accepted my promotion formally and updated my LinkedIn and told my parents and done everything that needed to be done. I made us dinner. His favorite, the lamb chops I made maybe 4 times a year, the ones that took 2 hours. He was visibly touched. He said it smelled incredible. He poured wine. We ate. We talked. He was in a good mood, and I let him be in a good mood because I am not a cruel person, and there was no need to make the dinner itself unpleasant. Then I cleared the plates, and I sat back down, and I put my phone on the table with the photo on it. The one I'd taken of his laptop screen 6 weeks ago, and I turned it to face him and I said, very calmly, I've known since March. I watched the color leave his face. I want you to understand something, he said. I haven't been upset for 6 weeks. I've been busy. The apartment is in my name starting May 1st. The joint account is being closed on Friday. Your half has already been transferred to an account in your name. I'm moving to the new place next weekend. HR at your office has no idea about any of this, and I intend to keep it that way, because I'm not interested in your job. I'm only interested in my life. He said my name. I'm not done, I said. I also know about the conversations you had about my promotion. I got the promotion anyway, which you probably know. I want you to sit with that. The silence was very long. I just want to understand, he said, finally. He was pale and he looked small, and I felt something that wasn't quite pity but was in the same zip code. Why didn't you say anything? Why did you wait? I picked up my wine glass. Because I wanted to be ready before you knew I was coming. I moved out the following Saturday. Euclid, oh wait, wrong story. I don't have a dog. I have a succulent wall, which I disassembled very carefully and transported to the new apartment in labeled boxes, because I grew every one of those plants from a cutting and they are mine, and they were always going to come with me. The new apartment has a south-facing window that is honestly better for them anyway. Adam moved out of the apartment at the end of April. I heard through the mutual friend pipeline, which I did not encourage but could not entirely stop, that things with Jess became complicated once certain people at their office became aware of the situation. I don't know the details, and I didn't ask. I got a text from him in June. It said, I'm sorry, I know that doesn't cover it, I'm just sorry. I read it. I thought about it for a while. I typed back, I know. And then I put my phone down and I went back to the project I was working on, which was a financial model for a client acquisition that my manager later said was the cleanest piece of analysis she'd seen all year. It wasn't about burning him down. It was never about that. It was about making sure that when I walked out of that chapter of my life, I walked out with everything that was mine, into a future that was fully intact, and he got to stand in the wreckage of what he'd done with a complete and total understanding of exactly how thoroughly he'd underestimated me. That's all I wanted. That and the succulent wall.